It's the Practical Prayer Podcast pre-show on New Thought Media Network. Wow, how about that?
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, I'm Bill. That's Carol, and we are on New Thought Media Network now on Facebook and YouTube, live to be present and to chat for a little bit, and then in a few minutes we're going to start recording another episode of the Practical Prayer Podcast, which goes out to podcast land in a week or so. This is episode number 149, so we have been doing this for a while.
Wow. That just feels so nice.
Yeah, and our podcast host just told us that we've been downloaded in more than 50 countries.
I saw that notice. That's like spectacular, isn't it?
I guess. I sometimes
Really?
wonder about what the 50 countries are. Yeah.
What does it mean?
And also there are 200, so yeah. 50 is good.
250. Come on.
Yeah. No, it's nice. It's wonderful. And it's possible that that's more because we actually switched podcast hosting platforms partway through to come into the fold at the New Thought Media Network.
Okay. That's
that.
the technical side. I'm not sure what time we did that. I remember you said something about it, but
Yeah.
you know.
It was a highly technical subject called "We Can Stop Paying Every Month." I said, "I'm there. I am absolutely there."
That's your side. I got to spend my time reading to make sure I can keep up with you when you start talking.
Okay, well that works for me. And also, getting out the credit card or the checkbook does captivate my attention a little bit. So it was very nice to get onto New Thought Media Network and have that all under one roof or umbrella or whatever. So I do want to welcome the folks who are on New Thought Media Network and tell you that we are delighted to have you here. This is the behind-the-scenes chat before we start the podcast. If you have a comment or a question or a prayer request, you can put it into the comments on your social media, and that'll show up here, and we can take it under advisement in real time. If you're one of those folks who prefers watching this on the replay, then you can always go to the website, which is bethelight.com, b-the-light.com, which you see on the screen over there. And there's a section for the podcast there, and there's a similar little button where you can make a comment and send a message to us. And we will include that in a future episode of the Practical Prayer Podcast and or pre-show. So there's no eclipse today.
Yeah.
God willing, there's no earthquake today.
No earthquake. And as far as the eclipse goes, to some of us, there was no eclipse anyway, because it just, it got a little overcast. That was it. But we talked about that already.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what happened where I am. It was very cloudy, and then it got dark and cloudy. And it was a different kind of dark than it usually gets when it's just the clouds blocking out the sun. So it was a little bit interesting, a little bit different, but
now we don't
it
live
was
that far from each
non-spectacular.
other.
No.
We don't live that far from each other, and I'm telling you, it was nothing. I mean, it was just tiny bit, cloudy. Like, if I didn't know that there was an eclipse happening, I wouldn't know.
Right.
There was
You might have gone
no
out
interesting
The
darkness.
light's kind of weird, but that would be it.
Yeah.
Some friends of mine were in the totality of the eclipse, and they said it was really strange because they're like in Vermont in the middle of nowhere, well, in the middle of farmland. And as it started getting dark, all the birds and the frogs started singing like crazy. And it got dark and they all shut up. And then it started getting light a little bit, and they all started singing again. And then it got daylight, and they stopped. It's like had that whole night to day cycle in 4 minutes.
Since it won't happen again in my lifetime, there's no point in worrying about this. But, I would just scoot up to Vermont so I could be in the totality of it. But I didn't.
Yeah. Oh, well.
But I thought, I hung out here because I thought I'd experience a little more than I did. But whatever.
Well, if you put it in your bucket list, then you have to keep your bucket around for a while for the next one.
That's too much life. I gotta live. I gotta live too much life just to get to that. Never mind.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. Well, let us record an episode of the Practical Prayer Podcast. And I know that your topic is awakening. And
Yes.
I'm not going to jump the gun and ask you anything about that now. So let's start the podcast, and then I can ask you what you meant.
Okay.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony.
We've got another episode of the Practical Prayer Podcast. Very much looking forward to this. Hi, back to you. And you sometimes come up with a one-word topic, and I think I know what you mean, but then my mind starts to figure out other things that same topic could mean.
Okay.
Because
So-
my mind is a troublemaker.
I'm leaving that alone. So
It's true.
I want to talk about... Oh, maybe we'll do an episode on that, your troublemaking mind. Okay, so I wanted... the word is awakening. And so I want to pose it as a question for this reason, because I want to hear what you have to say. I have some thoughts, I'll share them, of course, and some feelings, but I don't want to get off on what I've been feeling about it. I want to hear exactly from you.
Okay, so phrase the question.
Fair enough?
I'll even jot it down here. Yep, works for me.
Okay. What is awakening? For example, when a person says, I am awakened, or people are, they use the, even put it in tense, they're woke. What are they saying?
To me, and awakening is one of those terms that in a spiritual context is a little bit like enlightened, and there's enlightenment and becoming enlightened. And then there's somebody who claims that they're done and that they are completely enlightened. Those are the scary people. The people, similarly, who say that they are completely awakened are also kind of scary. That doesn't happen quite as much because it's all about the process. It is all about the process of awakening. And, woke is a term that came into vogue for a year or two and then got a lot of pushback from other people. And we'll hold off on woke for a little bit. Awakening is moving into a greater experience or expression of understanding of the world around us and our place in it. To understand what the pieces are, how they fit together, and how we are part of it. In a spiritual context, especially, it's really easy in New Thought because the premise is that there's only one power, one presence, one love, one source, one intelligence, one whatever it is. And we will happily go through the entire creation story again if you'd like to. We'll hold off on that for right now. But since there is this expressing itself in myriad forms, millions and billions of planets and people and creatures and particles and everything, and it's all that one substance, that one energy, that one intelligence, that one love, that one, formed and shaped and arranged in a particular way. Awakening is the process of us becoming more aware of that true nature of us and of everything around us. Awakening is that awareness that we're part of that infinite creative power and presence.
Okay, that kind of fits. Usually, sometimes I have these one-word questions. These questions is triggered by something I heard or read or whatever. And I was listening to somebody. I'm always listening or reading something, and they kept repeating the phrase "my awakening" in in the date that they gave it. And I'll be honest with you, it did hit up on something from my life across the street because there used to be, well, there was the term "I got saved,"
Mm-hmm.
and they would say, when did you get saved? And then somebody would say, and I'm just talking about different people, not one conversation. Somebody would say, well, if you don't know the date that you got saved, you're not really saved.
Yeah.
And, I had all of these thoughts, and I don't want to be negative. I just don't want to. Anyway, when this person said, when I awakened, or I had my awakening in 20, whatever it was, I kept thinking, like, how do you know when you had this awakening? To me, it's a process of
Yeah.
something happening and unfolding all the time. And I do understand that, yeah, it's growth, and some days you may not exhibit awakening behavior as much as others. But I was so offended by the person's comment, and it had nothing to do with them. It just hit upon something from back there. But it's like, is this an ego statement here where I'm awakened and you're not, and you have to get to where I am?
Well,
That's very
yeah,
hurtful to me.
yeah, and the person who said that if you don't know the date that you became awakened, then you're not awakened, which takes the whole spiritual process back down to something that's judgmental and external and, has somebody else's metric on it. Uh, it is completely possible, and we've seen it happen, that somebody realizes, oh my gosh, here is a new way of understanding the world, a new way of engaging with the world, of letting go of things that haven't been working for me, and it's a bursting. Suddenly they burst into this new experience, and that is the event of awakening. And for other people, things aren't working for them, and they're doing some studying, and they're doing some reading, and they're changing some things, and they're getting into a spiritual practice, and they're doing something, and then they look back and they say, I used to be so screwed up, and now I'm feeling so much happier. And I couldn't imagine living without this new awareness of the way that the world works and the way that I'm engaging with it. They've had just as profound an awakening, and they don't know what the date was. They might be able to
Hmm.
trace back to when they first, went to a group meeting or heard a YouTube or picked up a book, but it might not matter because their experience is more about building something rather than having it, arriving. It's like building a house rather than arriving at somebody else's house and moving in.
Yeah, yeah. And how do you pinpoint it? Because it could be like a culmination of things, understandings,
Mm-hmm.
your whole lifetime or half your lifetime or whatever. You know, I hang out at the ocean all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'll go sit at the edge of the water and just sit so that, the water, just the waves come and I feel the waves. And I use all kind of analogies with that at times. And I think about this wave represents a new understanding. And this one that's coming in is helping me understand the last one better. And oops, here comes another thought that I hadn't thought before. And to me, that's what awakening is because each day or with each experience, you learn more about whatever it is you know, is on your mind at the time, or your life, or the universe, or spirit, or God, or whatever. It's constant. And so to say or have the idea that you are awakened and someone else isn't feels not so comfortable to me. You know, it's like,
Oh,
how
I
do,
completely agree.
you know, how can we be friends? You know what I mean? You know,
I actually find
I mean,
myself able to be friends with a lot of people who are just wrong.
well, I guess using the term friendship was wrong, but when I'm talking to you, I don't feel less than. I clearly maintain the idea that you are my teacher. That's how I think of you. And because that's how I want it to be, because I still learn from you. But I don't feel less than, like he's more awakened than me. So I feel less than. I don't, you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean, and I also know what they call a teacher who doesn't have a student. The guy's sitting there talking to himself. So this is you are playing a very valuable part in this in this entire program here. So let's go back to being saved, and because that's not something that that New Thought particularly encompasses. You know, being saved, if somebody goes along and then suddenly realizes that Jesus is their Lord and Savior, and their life is different from that point on. The thought that somebody can be saved and they don't need to continue working on their spiritual development, they don't need to pay any more attention to it, they're saved, they're done, they can wash their hands and walk away. Not true. There's still, there's still prayers to be done, there's still meditation to be done, there's still good deeds that need to be attended to, there's still amends that get to be made. So if somebody's proudly saying they know what the date is, wonderful. I have a lot of friends who are in recovery for drugs or alcohol or whatever their addictions happen to be. And they know what their sobriety date is. They know that this is the first day that I intentionally was not using. And some of them have several sobriety days because the first one didn't work and the second one didn't work either. And then they went back to it. And it's an understanding of that texture and that nuance. It's not about, oh, suddenly this happened and everything's the same. Because before that sobriety date, they're having a life and going through their life. And after that sobriety life date, they're going through experiences, having a life. And tends to be all the meetings they go to are after their sobriety date. And they go to the meetings to support each other and to learn something new about themselves and to get into a deeper experience of empathy with the other people that they're sharing their world with.
Yeah. On the other side, there are so many different interpretations of salvation. So when somebody says in one church, I've been saved, and then you go to another denomination, it's a different one. And then when you talked about, you know, you can, you can only be saved one time, and others you have to keep on getting saved because you screwed up, so you got to go get saved again. Or maybe you never really were. And I don't mean to be ugly if there are some Christians listening. You know, I'm still quite hesitant about saying things because I don't want to offend anybody. But, you know, the reality is that for me, it's like you got to be careful with that word awakened or saved. I don't care which one you use. It doesn't make you better. It means that, you know, your eyes are open to more understandings and greater awarenesses. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And to me, that's the delightful thing. I mean, I get up at 5 every morning. My husband says, you know, nobody on the planet gets up at 5. And then when the seasons change, you know, it 5 turns into 4. Not because I like it. It's just the way it goes. And
That's just when Carol's body says it's time to get up.
it's time to get up. And I look at the clock and I'm like, 4:02. Come on, please. But sometimes I'll just go ahead with it and get up. But I'm always every day excited even when there's crap going on, I'm always excited because it's an opportunity to know something that I didn't know. I'm going to find out something new. Something's going to work today that didn't work yesterday. I'm talking about technology and all that kind of stuff. Or I'm going
All
to
of it,
talk to
yeah.
somebody and, it's going to be an aha moment. Like I feel that first thing in the morning, but that doesn't make me any different or better. Because some
Hmm.
people get up with the same attitude and they get up at 9 or 7. And it's just, this is a 5 o'clock club. This is the nut club. Who knows? But I
It's
just
just
heard that. Yeah. And the person, I think why it got me is that the person has a pretty large audience. Their voice does go out quite a lot, distance wise. And I was just thinking, how many people probably don't feel good about what you just said?
hmm,
And I'm sure he didn't mean anything by it, but I don't know, maybe did.
right.
But, you know,
That's actually a wonderful segue back into the other term that we said we put on hold a little bit before, which is woke.
mhm.
So, and actually, what we're going to do is we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back and talk woke. Are you ready to get results? Now, that's not a rhetorical question. Are you ready to get results? RUR2GR. That's actually the abbreviation for the steps in a practical prayer: recognition, unification, realization, gratitude, and release, with a couple of extra steps in there in case some doubt creeps in along the way. RUR2GR. This class is about the prayer technique that's common to all of the spiritual practices and religions in the most effective prayers that they have. And by effective, I mean that the prayer works. It actually creates a change in the experience of the person doing the prayer. It gets a result. We're going to begin with theory, and then we're going to take it into practice. By the end of the class, you will have your very own practical prayer that will help create transformation in your life.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Bill. I am so anxious to get to this next part. Now let me do this again, all right?
You're so excited. This is
Welcome
Carol,
back.
take two.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony, and we're going to talk about woke. Ooh,
We're going to
that
talk
one.
about woke
Go
as part
ahead.
of our discussion of awakening. So,
Yes.
woke was something that started getting really relevant 4 or 5 years ago, and it implied an understanding of the ways that we're dealing with each other on a more fundamental level than the superficial way that we'd been interacting amongst the sexes and the genders and the races and the economic classes and the nationalities and the ethnicities and so forth. And interesting, and that there's been a whole bunch of pushback, including the governor of Florida, who had this whole campaign. He wanted to be the president of the United States, and he was campaigning against woke. And he thought that that was going to be a winning combination. The synonym for woke, the word that means the same as woke, is empathetic. When we are woke, we are understanding somebody else's perspective. We are able to walk a mile in their shoes. We are able to understand where they're coming from. And by having that empathetic understanding, we're able to apply the most important rule of all the religions. And by the way, they all share this one rule, which is the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't understand what you're doing to them, if you don't understand what's being done unto them, then you can't possibly understand what you'd like to have done unto you.
Mm-hmm.
If there's an assumption that everything I'm doing is just fine and it's landing on other people and they have no objection to it, then there's no reason to change anything. And if, in fact, it's not landing on other people the way that it would land on us, then woke is understanding what the actual impact of our activities and our actions are. Awakening is a spiritual context of waking up to the bigger picture, understanding what's going on. And woke is mostly about other people and the groups of people. Awakening is an even broader understanding of our involvement and participation and partnership with that infinite creative power. But they're both aspects of the same thing.
So, yeah, you can't say woke is the past tense of being awakened because it's a little bit
No,
more when you
it's yeah,
talk
they're
about
different.
it.
They're
Yeah.
different. But the if somebody has an anti-woke campaign, if you can manage to change the subject, so what they're doing is having an anti-empathy campaign. We are fighting the need to be empathetic towards others. Like, that's not a winner. That's not a winning approach.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole nother street to go down because, there's the idea that if you pretend that there is nothing different, then everything disappears. And that's painting with a broad brush. But that
Hmm.
is the part of our awakening is understanding that piece as well. That we're one, of course, but there are differences in. I have a friend who is from the South, and she's maybe about almost 10 years older than I am. So she's had a whole lot of different life experiences living in the South as opposed to me, who's, I'm Philly. I'm a Philly girl. So,
Hmm.
and if a person doesn't understand her experience, they say things to offend her. And it's important, I think, to kind of take a minute to understand who you're talking to.
Hmm.
It's not that big a deal. You know what I mean? It's not that big a deal to understand that this doesn't work. I can't say this across the board. So, I mean, do I ever trip up? You bet. But I usually will say ahead of time, look, I might make a mistake, but trust me, it's a mistake, right? Because I'm used to thinking and I'm talking quicker and forgive me, and I will stop and correct it. It doesn't reflect any negativity that's in my heart for you. But I think that's enough to say that I'm at least being empathetic about the possibility of my offending you. But if you don't consider it at all, you'll just talk willy nilly and doesn't really matter what you say. To you,
Yeah. Yeah. So now I find myself at choice. I could either like do the Reverend Bill, oh yes, I am agreeing with you, and we're going to talk down to the problem that exists out there, or I could be real personal about this and own it myself. And awakening for me, because as you know, when I first moved to Philadelphia in 1984, it was to be on a radio morning show, and I had been doing radio morning shows for 3 or 4 years before that, and it was zany comedy, and I got to say at the beginning, it was very funny. We were very, very funny. I was so arrogant and so judgmental, and yes, so racist in some of the stuff that we were saying on the air, and it was perfectly acceptable in the 80s to do that, and it was really, really funny. And my job was to make fun of people, and I was very good at it. And a few years later, that's probably, yeah, within 4 or 5 years, I was starting to do some work on myself, and my awakening was I realized that I couldn't do that. I could not do slash and burn humor anymore. I couldn't make myself be funny at the expense of other people. That was maybe my woke moment. That was part of my awakening. And I was terrified because I thought, oh, I'm not going to be funny anymore. And that was terrifying. Oh my goodness. And it turns out I can still be funny. And there are ways to be funny that are not at other people's expense. And so that whole transformation has been ongoing. And there are still times when somebody says something and I have that observation, that wicked, funny, insightful, this is hysterical, that could turn into a really good punchline. And I don't say it because it's got too much harm in it as well. It's not worth the joke. As far as I'm concerned, that's being woke. I mean, it'd be nice if those things never occurred to me, but sometimes they're funny and they're not offensive. In which case, I'm glad that they occurred to me. So I'll let myself do the filtering after those thoughts show up. So, and it's a process. It's a process. It's been quite a while since I've really made a complete fool of myself doing that, but less and less often.
I like the word process that you used,
Yeah.
because it is ongoing, and it made me think of a term that I used recently that oh my goodness, I certainly absolutely meant no harm. And when I used the term, I caught it as soon as I said it, and I could not, I didn't know whether it was a bad term or not. It's just that I didn't want to. I really didn't. I don't know to this day whether it was, because I don't know who to ask. Because I don't want to offend. I don't want to offend anybody by asking. So I thought, okay, just don't say that. And I really went through this thing like, where did that come from? It didn't come from a mean place. It actually
Right.
came from a place where I was saying something and didn't want to say it in an offensive way. So this I thought was an alternative. I said,
Right.
but you haven't been there in a long time. You don't know if this is an acceptable alternative or not. So,
Right.
yes, I don't know if you ever really, we get better. We get better because it's there, but it's that process. And I spent time with that I doubt that I'll say that again. I really doubt it.
And perhaps what
It
you've
didn't
done
get
is,
a bad response.
yeah, and maybe what you've done now is begun defining for yourself what awakening is. It's the process of becoming more aware of who you are and how the world works and who you want to be in that world and how you want to engage. And a lot of times we learn from our mistakes. We do something or say something and everything blows up. Everybody gets mad at us, or something falls apart, or things that were supposed to happen are now not going to happen. We cancel this, that, whatever. So something happens, and then we get to take that as input and then maybe do something different next time. That's awakening. Saying, that didn't work. I get to never do that again. Let me see what I'm going to do instead next time.
So then we can say that awakening is a process that we're going through in unfolding and understanding of ourselves, how the world works around, that we're in, works around us, and all these things, how it all comes together and how we flow together in a different way, you know. So it doesn't set us apart. I'm not more awakened than anybody else. Is that fair?
Oh, I
Because
think so.
I'm in the process, you know.
Yeah, and I can look at somebody who is completely, in my observation, dysfunctional and bigoted and uncaring and unthoughtful, and be grateful that I'm not there. And I can even, if I wanted to, I said, well, they're not as awakened as I am, but maybe they were so much worse before that they've actually made a lot more progress than I've made. I started out being not bad, and now I've gotten to better. Maybe they started out as awful, and they're just up to bad. I don't know. It's none of my
But
business.
okay, and then how about this though? They are. It's a subject. On that subject, you may be more awakened, woke. There's another. I mean, because there's so many dimensions to us, and on another subject, they may be more further along the process than I am.
hmm
So how do you know?
Well, yeah, and we don't.
Yeah.
And if we think that we know, and we think that we want to label other people and put our values on them, and we're just being judgmental. And when we're judgmental, we could be completely right, or we could just be judgmental.
Well, how can you be judgmental and completely right?
Ask
unless you're
anybody who's in
saying,
judgment of something else if they think that they're wrong. They'll always say that they're not wrong. The person who's in judgment of somebody else thinks they know what's right. They're often incorrect, but they never think they're wrong.
hmm. I just want to speak about my girlfriend that I've spoken about a few times. And this is like 50 years, a little bit more, that we've been really good friends without a break. But
Hmm.
she blurted out one time, it was halfway, maybe through 20 years ago. She blurted out this thing. We were in a group of people, and she says, she thinks, Carol thinks everything is okay. She doesn't think there's any sin. She thinks everything is okay. And she pisses me off with that. And I didn't know, I really didn't know that her assessment of me in that way made her so upset. I didn't know. And all I could do was just kind of laugh because I looked at the faces of the people she was talking to, and they were looking at, I was just imagining they were saying, finally, somebody, you know, who's not, somebody who's not going to, like hang me out to dry for this. But I never forgot that. And it took her a while to get, I don't know if she's over it yet or not. It's just not something that burns her up anymore.
Well, it didn't
She just,
interfere with the friendship.
yeah, whatever. She would shake her head sometime and don't, and I look at it like this. I said, do you want to be punished? I mean, if you want to be punished, I give you permission to punish yourself. But I can't do that for you. And
Hmm.
that would piss her off even more. So then we get together, a week or so later, and everything is okay. But to me, that's how you look at people arrive at different levels of acceptance. I don't like the word tolerance. I don't like that. It sounds to
No,
me like you're
tolerance
putting
is
up
when
with
you're looking
something.
down on something and you still let it happen.
Yeah, so you just look at it and say, okay, that's a different way of looking at it. Maybe I'll understand it, maybe I won't, but you're still cool,
Hmm.
you know? You and some of people in the audience listening might have a challenge for me on that one. And the only thing I would say is be kind to me because I'm still awakening. So I may seem to be tolerant or what is it, accepting of
Yeah.
everything, and there might be some things I don't know that I'm not accepting of yet. We'll
Well,
see.
yeah. If somebody has a judgment that you need to be judgmental about something so that you can decide whether it's good or bad or right or wrong for somebody else to have done, then that's on them. And if we are working our own program and get back to the topic that we started with, there's one power, one presence, one love. And our goal is to be aware of that, to be focused on that. Then when these horrible things come along where we can be judgmental or defensive or want to smite someone or something, and instead bring in the love and say, what would love do here? How can love make
Mm,
this be better?
mm-hmm.
Then we're not pushing against anything. We're we're saying, okay, this is where you are, this is where the situation is, and we're going to invite more love into the situation rather than go attack it.
Huge. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really, really big. You know, do you know what you have to do to make that, to assume that posture in situations? Some are easy, but there are some that are not easy. You
There are
know,
some that are not easy. That is true.
yeah.
There are some that are a huge challenge. And those, of course, are the ones that are in control because your friend probably, there's a bunch of stuff that goes on that would annoy other people and she thinks it's just fine. But when one comes along that pushes her buttons, then she thinks everybody needs to be on board with her indignation. We
Mm-hmm.
need to condemn that. Why? You don't like it. You're going to invite in something different. You don't need a posse for this.
The interesting thing is on that conversation, and it does happen to some degree after that, I don't ever have to say anything. I never do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I wasn't joking when I said people would almost have a sigh of relief. Like, you know, because the other thing is that, of course, I had the title Reverend in front of me, my
Mm-hmm.
name. So that made me a bad Reverend because didn't have the same position every Reverend had.
Right.
Um,
Because you're
but
supposed to
then
be
they,
judgmental and harsh and
yeah, and I just
vindictive,
was
and you're
not.
not. You're just loving.
No,
Okay, get out
I
of here.
just, I, you know,
Turn the
and I
collar
would
back
think,
in.
okay, well, I can absolutely explain my position on this, no question about it. But nobody ever really seems to need it. They just seem to be relieved and okay, you know, and I don't get invited to a lot of the stuff either, which is another story. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Let's take another break, and then we're going to do a prayer. Guess what it's going to be on?
awakening, woke.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marchiony's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony.
We're going to do a prayer.
Yeah.
We've been talking about awakening, and we're going to do a prayer inviting that experience of awakening. And the example that I'd like to give is, because we've been talking about, some people claim that the awakening or the being saved is an event. It's something that just happens. And other people, Carol and I in particular, understand that it's more of a process. So let's imagine going indoors into a very light-controlled room in the middle of the night. And it's dark and it's dark and it's dark and it continues being dark. And the sun comes up outside and it's still dark in the room. And then we open the door and suddenly there is this event of light. That is the event of awakening. And if we're sitting outside in nature and it's pitch dark in the middle of the night, and then there starts to be a little bit of gray on the horizon, and then a little more, and then a little more, and then the sun comes out, and suddenly there's this growing thing, and there's daylight on the way. And after a few hours, it is that experience of bright sunshine, but it was a gradual experience for us. Instead of that, I opened the door and suddenly it happened. Those are both awakening. Those are both going from a place of relative darkness to relative light. And the thought that the light that we're experiencing now is all there ever can be is simply arrogance. And the thought that we have to do our process of moving from darkness into light in a particular way in order for it to count is ridiculous. You know, we can dispense with that. Everybody's having their own experience. And the prayer today is about understanding the experience that we're having and inviting an even deeper experience of awakening and a greater awareness of that bright light that's shining. So we'll turn our attention to the light. And the light is the metaphor for that divine power and presence, that infinite love, that one creative power that shares itself as all of its creation. We call it God. We call it spirit or nature. We call it the Big Bang. We call it evolution. Whatever it is that we call it, it is that one process, that one energy, that one love, that one substance, that one intelligence that continues to share itself as all of its creation. Everything that exists, everywhere, every person, every activity, every event is that one taking form in a different way. Each one who is listening to my voice right now is whole and complete, beginning to end, Nothing but that divine love taking individual form. That is what we are, each of us in our own way. We're not the same, but we're that same power and presence expressed in different ways. So it is completely possible for that one divine power and presence, which is within us, which is us, to shine even more brightly. For our awareness to become even more fine-tuned to that grandeur, to that love, to that light. That's the truth of our essence and is the truth of everything else in creation. Everything is that bright light of love shining in its own way. And awakening is an increasing awareness of that divinity. That what we're looking at is the divine itself. That what we are looking with is the divine itself. That we are in connection and communion with that good all the time. And as we open to a deeper awareness of that bright light of love that is shining, we awaken to the truth of what's going on in the world around us and what's going on as us as well. This is awakening, and it's happening for each of us in our own way, blossoming, blooming, pouring into creation in new and wonderful and joyous ways. That's what's going on. That is the awakening that's at hand. And I'm so grateful for it. I am so grateful for the good that's already unfolding, and I'm so grateful to know that it continues to unfold and reveal itself in every moment and every activity. And so with a deep feeling of thanks for all of this good already unfolding and still to come, I speak this word, and I release it into that one creative law that creates everything. And I know it is now creating this even deeper awareness, this awakening to the truth of what we are. And so I let it be. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com,
be-the-light.com.
where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
That is episode number 149 of the Practical Prayer Podcast. Thank you, everybody who's joining us on New Thought Media Network.
I see a lot of comments over here.
Yeah.
And, yeah. So,
Morning show.
it's morning. Oh, it's morning somewhere, I suppose,
Yeah.
yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
My morning show in Philadelphia was on WFIL, which is an AM station,
That takes
which
me
now
back.
broadcasts. Oh yeah, now it broadcasts sermons,
Does it?
sermons and gospel
I didn't-
music. I think.
I didn't even know it was still around, but yeah, I remember it takes me back a long way. Let's see. I see one on here says, I hope to learn the prayer steps. So whoever that is, you got to
Yep.
keep coming because we go over that and
Yep.
give lots
You can
of
also
examples.
you can get the shortcut too. You can get the shortcut by buying the book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, or going to the website at BeTheLight.com. Oh, this is an opportunity to put a plug in. Go to the website at be-the-light.com, and you can sign up for the Practical Prayer class, which is an online on-demand class that will teach you the 5 or 7 steps, including the 4 Ps of a good affirmation. 5, if you include the pivot. Anyway, it's at be-the-light.com. You can also make a comment there if you'd like. If you're listening to a recording of this or don't want to make a comment in real time on the social media, you can go to the website. And in the section on Practical Prayer Podcast, you can submit a comment, and we will take that under consideration.
The class is the class is worth it. You know, I took
Yeah.
it twice, right? And I'm still learning from it or living from it, using it, whatever. It's really good. But I'll tell you about that book. We had that book in the first class, or I've taken a few classes with you, so I'm not sure which one. But anyway, I found 2 prayers in there that really just were so perfect. I kept saying, boy, I wish I had these when I was in corporate, I wish I had these when I was an active pastor. The first time I said that, I thought, oh, I wonder how that sounded. But it was true. So it's really so worth it because all of them are good. All the prayers are good. But just like anything else, it's probably going to be a few of them that just like are your go-to. I use a couple of them as go-tos, change the words around and fit it in the context a little bit. But yeah, I especially wish I had one when I was in corporate that would have saved me a great deal of angst.
Yep.
Anyway,
Yep. And
yeah.
all those prayers are on Insight Timer. I'm an Insight Timer teacher, among other things. And it's interesting because there are comments that come back from people, and different people resonate with different prayers. And they have a different reason that it really worked for them. And they've been on there long enough at this point that people will say, I'm gonna do this one every day. And there's 40 of them in there. So there are different people doing different ones every day. And God bless, that's how the world works. This is not everybody goes to Baskin Robbins and gets the same flavor. There's a reason there's 31 of them over there. No?
Yeah, it depends on where you are in your life and what you're doing. For so many years, I was always in leadership and had to be in meetings and all of that and go through an agenda that wasn't always pleasant or receptive to everybody. And yet that was what was happening. And I didn't have these book of prayers. I had some standards and I had some that got me through. And I mean, no disrespect about that, but I kind of wish I had these others because it brings in a different perspective. It brings you into a different place so that when you're moving forward in a situation that could be unpleasant, you move forward differently and the situation looks different. And, in my world, being a woman in male-dominated positions always, confidence was a big thing. Like you really had to, if you didn't have confidence, you better show it. And when you have the universe backing you up because you are now awakened to some new ideas and some new realities, confidence isn't an issue. It's what's there. It just kind of opens up what has always been there. And I'm just going on and on because I just think that these prayers make life different in the sense that in the way that you approach it. Even yucky people, they got it in for you, and just what they got the torches, and what the torches are. But but somehow these prayers help you to face those situations that in another without them you may feel intimidated or less powerful, so to speak. And that's an important word too. They are empowering, and this was not a part of our discussion. It just flowed in there. But I'm just saying, it's an awakening book. It helps in the awakening of our journey, of ourselves on this journey. And who the heck doesn't need help on this journey? I know I have,
Yeah, thank you. And I kind of regret that I didn't have the prayers to offer you back when you were in corporate America. And what I had was ridiculously inappropriate comedy bits on the radio.
Yeah, well.
What I had.
Yeah.
All right.
We're
going to draw this
places,
episode
but it's,
well, that's right.
yeah.
I'm glad we got to where we are now. Let us draw this
all
episode to a
about
close. It's almost 2:00. We have to clear out to make way for what's next on New Thought Media Network. Thank you all for joining in on the live stream and also on the recordings. See you in podcast land, and then back here next Monday.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought, Philadelphia. Planned Happiness Institute. Summit Center for Spiritual Living. One Heart Retreats. Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake. Unity, Kitchener. Unity Spiritual Center, Ottawa. Om Center for Spiritual Living. Satya Center. Begin Within Ministries. Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey. Unity of Savannah. And the Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.